about his case with Eric Coomer, but he was kind of on the screen, which I'm showing here again. He was talking about stuff, but he was on the screen. They were showing, I think, Patrick's side of his deposition in the beginning of it. It's basically his prefatory statement, and then his basically saying, Eric Coomer was working for these people, and I'm going to prove that he was working
Well, let
with
me
whatever.
give people a little background.
Absolutely.
Well, let me give a little background. That deposition, and Patrick has talked about. There may be people in the audience here who haven't heard what Patrick said concerning this over the last day or two. In fact, on our coalition call this morning, Patrick reiterated again with great detail. It was pretty fun the way he's describing this. But the attorney for Coomer was there, or one of the attorneys, and he was being very aggressive towards Peter Tickton. Now, Peter Tickton, he's 80 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, but he's a New Yorker. Okay, and if you're a New Yorker, it doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 180. Okay, if somebody gets in your face, you're going to get back in their face. It's just part of being a New Yorker. You tend to be territorial, and you're not taking any shit from anybody, and it goes to territory. In fact, I've said to this audience before, and other audiences, part of the reason that people from other parts of the country, other parts of the world take offense at President Trump is because he's, he's a hotelier. He enjoys to be, deal with people and flamboyant and all that sort of thing. But you get in his face, you try to, rip him off or something. He's a New Yorker. He ain't taking any shit. And he'll let you know that. And he'll get right back at you. Well, a lot of parts of the country, a lot of parts of the world, any, opposition to something like that is like, wow, that's like, so out of character. You should, stiff upper lip, but just, take it and, don't give anything back, and, I'm sorry if I offended you, something. But for a New Yorker, it's part of the culture to stand your ground, say what you want to say, but you come on the attack, you're going to get attacked back. So here's Tickton, Peter Tickton, attorney, Trump's friend all the way back to high school. Just to give you a picture, here's how long he's known President Trump. They were sitting 2 desks away from each other when the announcement came over the speaker in school that President Kennedy had been killed. That's how long they've known each other. President Trump has described him as his most trusted friend. Okay, so he's there as the attorney leading the legal team for Patrick Byrne. So he's the lead attorney. Well, one of the attorneys for Coomer is getting in his face and literally hitting him with his hands, assaulting him, but doing it in a location where they don't think there's a camera, okay, just off screen. And all you have to do is step another foot or two the other direction, and suddenly you're on the camera screen, right? So Patrick Byrne sees this, and it doesn't just happen once; it happens several times, and there's other witnesses seeing this happen. But it's not recorded. It's legal team's all set, except for one thing. There was a camera in a different location that caught part of this.
Nice.
Okay, but then Patrick steps into this whole thing, and he, is just reacting. Don't hit. This is an 80-year-old guy, man. What are you doing? And so they get Patrick, and Patrick actually wasn't trying to, but he steps on this guy's insole on his foot. And so now they're trying to claim that Patrick assaulted this other attorney. And then Patrick, he dials up a big loogie and spits on the guy's shoe.
What a slime, huh?
There's this whole thing, yeah. And but the reality is this. Here's how we interpret this. And then let me put it in a couple of other contexts. You see, this crowd that we're fighting, they have this old tired playbook that they pull stuff out of, and when they do this, they kind of like everybody exit stage left, everybody step forward, everybody step back, right? Think of a few days ago. Well, let me just finish this. So I believe what they were trying to do, and I mentioned this the other day, they were trying to set Peter Tickton up and or anybody on Patrick's team up to do an assault, because all the attorney had to do is step back a step or two and it's all on screen. So he could have stepped back, which he was actually trying to do, sucking Patrick into this. And Patrick said he was ready to swing on the guy. He was going to just franken clock him hard. And you have to understand, Patrick had a history when he was young of football like that. He's got it in his bloodstream still. Peter Tickton, he ain't taking no shit, and he's being restrained, but he's being challenged. If anybody had taken a swing and actually directly assaulted, they would have gone to the judge and declared that they weren't safe, couldn't proceed with the deposition, and it would have got delayed. And it might have got, a recorded instead of nobody present, police officers to guard everybody, etc., right? But because they didn't actually assault back, and they didn't want to press the assault issue, which Tickton says, nah, it's not worth it, whatever. Because they didn't press it, the deposition went on anyway. They were trying to find some way to delay this. Now, look at, just for the sake of comparative situations, what happened with Elihan? She was doing this little speaking thing and she gets assaulted. And she instantly responds to that assault and goes on the attack. She wasn't surprised. She was expecting it. I don't believe for a heartbeat that was the way it actually happened. It was a setup. And this guy sprays, vinegar on her. Well, I mean, there is danger there. She might have melted,
Vinegar, right?
like the Wizard of Oz, right? Who knows what kind of parasites would have killed on her.
Oh goodness. And yeah, that was such a setup. It looks like Juan's frozen for a second here, but guys, that was the worst setup I had ever seen. Oh, you went glitchy for a second, Juan. You went frozy for a minute.
Yeah,
I can hear you, but your car is frozen.
I do that once, twice here, just as there's.
Gotcha.
Well, yeah. It might freeze once or twice over the next 15 minutes, and then I'll be solid. So I apologize.
No problem. We get it. But, it's a connection deal. We get that. But dude, that was so set up. It's not even funny. She even looked up at the guy, and then if you notice too, what a lot of people didn't catch is she was doing her little speech, and then she looks up, and then she literally doesn't say anything. Like, you go from one sentence to the next. She looks up, and then she just looks down. And then she chases after him like she's gonna punch him, and like, come on. And then no, I'm gonna keep going. And that was the big bad attack. The guy said, you know what? I'm gonna get her good. I'm gonna go with some vinegar. And did you see the family of the guy? Yeah, they're Trump supporters, all right, with the green hair. I mean, it's, the playbook's going like crazy, dude. It's they're trying to replay and they are doing it, right? They're doing the color revolution deal in Minnesota the same type of way.
Let's tie a bigger circle around this.
Absolutely.
Look at what happened a week and a half ago with Tina Peters. You had an inmate. Tina is in a closet where she's returning some items, because they have to do cleanup and chores and like that. So she's in there. That's the one place where there isn't any camera. You have cameras out in the area, the door to the closet, etc. This gal comes out of nowhere, and this gal that attacked Tina, by the way, she is in there in part because she has a history of attacking her, soulmate, partner, whatever, 3 times with a knife. Okay, so she has an assault history. Tina, who has never even had a park, let alone a speeding ticket or a traffic infraction, right? She's in the closet. This gal comes and seeks her out and starts punching her out in the closet. When Tina responds, this gal is into the area where the camera's at. And suddenly she's there letting Tina hit her to push her back. Oh, she knows right where the camera's at. They were baiting Tina. And then who goes to solitary? Tina. They do not investigate the woman that goes into the closet. And they edit a video that they release of this whole thing where it shows Tina pushing her out. Well, when we get to other areas of the video, and by the way, her legal team has not yet been given the video, even though I asked for it instantly. It was released to the public by the prison.
Oh, God.
But edited, okay? But when you see, even with the edited, what's going on, you can see that this gal's raising her arm at the shoulder and blocking away at Tina. Okay, but they claim Tina's the aggressor. And what they wanted to do is to target Tina to get her as this, all Trump people are aggressive, assertive, confrontational, fighting it out. This is part of their game. It's like everybody got the memo. Okay. Try to bait them into something and make them look like the bad guys. So it's the same playbook happening over and over, and somebody is calling the shots here behind the scenes.
Oh, big time. And yeah, it reeks of desperation too. And I don't know if you caught, I don't want to bounce around too much because we have, a lot of stuff to talk about. The election we can talk about. We can talk about how Trump is destroying the world order and how panicked they are. But as you were kind of getting your stuff settled here, the Gutierrez is warning of the United Nations imminent financial collapse because some people aren't paying, and he was just like bumbling all over his words like crazy. And so
I did hear that, and
nice.
At the same time, while you were playing that, I could hear the angels singing. Hallelujah.
It's amazing to me, right? And it's what the thing is that you, myself, and many others, and everybody that's listening here in the crowd, they've known about the fraud of the election since it happened, essentially, right? And we've been screaming from the rooftops, and I kind of joked about it yesterday on one of the shows with, like, well, it takes these, Taibbi and Schellenberg and Hoffenstein and to come out and say like, oh, hey, we found this fraud on these people and these NGOs and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait, why does it take? And I'm like, well, maybe that's what it does need to take is that we need to have people that are, air quotes, not from our side. We've been screaming about our stuff, but yet the narrative finally comes through and it's, 6 years later, but yet all of the pieces are coming back together like right now. And it seems not only here for the election, but Trump is his connections to people, world leaders and stuff like that. Like all these different scenarios seem to be dovetailing quite nicely back together right now. I'm kind of loving it.
Well, let me just add to this audience. I have spoken to this audience previously and said numerous times that there is a numbers equation that has to click in here. You have to have 80+% of the public in agreement with where things are going and what you're going to do, so that you do not go into civil war, even though you will have civil unrest. So there has to be some public consensus within the broad public electorate that things are going in the right direction. Every point below 80+%, a very specific number, that you go, the risk of falling into some type of civil unrest that broaches into civil war increases, and it increases exponentially. And so, for example, when President Trump was approached by Patrick, the Flynn brothers, Mike and Joe, Sidney Powell, a couple of other people on December 18th of 2020 about, and I mentioned Patrick, about signing an Insurrection Act, creating an Insurrection Act document, because the Homeland Security people, FBI, CIA, NSA, everybody was in collusion to see that the 2020 vote was certified without actually verifying that it was an honest vote, that it wasn't interfered with by foreign parties. And we had data at that time. Remember, all the way back in the fall of 2020, we had excellent documentation that was not being accepted and wasn't being processed through the right places, as parties, etc. There was literally an insurrection to force a fraudulent vote onto the American people and onto the world. And we knew even at that time that Obama was in on it. Now, in part, let me just qualify this further by saying, for example, where was Patrick Byrne in this whole equation at that time? He is the person who went to Hillary Clinton because persons in the FBI who were contacts that he had been dealing with for a long time on other matters, where he was a numbered, named agent under, contract with as a trusted source to the FBI and to other intelligence agencies in the U.S. system. He was approached, asked, they told him that they had information Hillary was receiving bribes back in early 2016, coming up on the 2016 election, the first Trump election, and that they wanted to verify if that was true and for him to try and see if she would in fact receive a bribe, an illegal bribe, which she did agree to take a bribe for services, if you will. When Patrick was changing floors on an elevator, or when Hillary was changing floors on an elevator, her staff saw her get in the elevator on one floor. She got off on an intermediate floor by herself, spoke with Patrick, agreed to the circumstances and what the deal was for. That was all recorded. She got back on the elevator. The staff on the ground never knew that there was an intermediate stop. It just, to all the world, looked like she just got on at the top floor and got off at the bottom floor alone. And everybody in this audience should remember that when Bill was president, Hillary would make the security team keep a very broad distance from her and not be in her face, in her space. And on several occasions, Hillary ditched her security team and literally turned up on the other side of the country. Okay. Yeah. Why did she do that? Because Hillary is a practicing witch. Yep. And she wanted to attend certain ceremonies with other friends and groups at different times without any record of that being there available into the rest of the public. And so that was where, and she's currently a member of the Wing Coven, honorary member on the New York side. And, that's been there all the way back to then. We didn't talk about it publicly at the time when I was doing the Whitewater stuff in the mid 90s, but we were very aware of what was going on in that realm. And it just, the public wasn't ready to hear any of that at the time. So when she was doing the campaign stuff, running for president, she was similarly had the practice of keeping security and other people away at specific moments. And those are those moments when there's no witnesses for things that she may otherwise want to do or complete. And this was one of those moments. Now, moving forward from the Patrick stuff, Patrick was aware she was willing to take a bribe, and then the FBI stopped going any further. They were all partying, popping the champagne corks. They'd done this great job. And suddenly, a couple days later, they tell Patrick to forget everything that happened, lose anything that he had associated with what he had documented. And they even warned him his life may depend on it. If he ever pursues this, his life is on the line. And where did the information come from that he needed to drop this? They implied from the very, very top. And the only way to interpret that wasn't just another agency head or CIA or something like that, but the president himself. Well, what have Tulsi and President Trump been saying now the last few days? They have former President Obama dead to rights on trying to fix the 2016 election, and then the follow through to fix the 2020 election where they had failed to go the distance the first time around to guarantee that Trump wouldn't get in 2020. And then what hasn't been said publicly is that we have them dead to rights on 2024, where they tried to fix the election again and continued through. That will come out in the future. But the Chinese printed ballots that came in first into Singapore, then Vancouver, BC, then down to Seattle, and then trucked out across the western part of the U.S., and then other ballots that came in, and I'm talking tens and tens and tens of millions from each side. Others that came in through an East Coast port and throughout the East Coast to try to fix the elections. Now, the interesting thing there, and that happened both 2020 and 2024 on that, look at what they went to go after at Georgia the other day, and look who was present. Tulsi was notably present when the raid took place to get the ballots at Georgia. Now, her role within the national security front as national director of national intelligence is aimed at foreign actors. Anything that would cross our shore but come from an outside location. She's not supposed to be doing stuff directed internally into the country, except in those matters where there may be some foreign action
Ding, ding,
aimed
ding.
at America internally. Then her role does come online. Now, she was there as an observer. Even the people that hate Tulsi have had to admit that she did nothing illegal. They're trying to attack her to force her to say, I was there to do this or that, other than just observe. But she was present, and it sent a message that there actually is, and that's why she's releasing some of this information now related to Obama, collusion with foreign government, foreign intelligence agencies, foreign actors who have subverted the 2020 election, because the ballots and the vote information in the machines that was seized the other day in Georgia isn't about 2024. It's about 2020. And then it's unique in the country in that Georgia, the people that were fighting the legal side of this inside Georgia, what they did was get a judge at a certain point to freeze all of the election information and order that it be preserved beyond the 22-month period through which the data can be destroyed from any federal election. Well, the judge said, no, we're not going to let you destroy it, and had it preserved. So they got this favorable ruling several years ago. That information related to the 2020 election is still there in Georgia. Now, what is not public but is kind of public is that there is at least one, actually probably more than one person from inside the Georgia voting records management system who have been providing information to policing investigative authorities concerning what happened in Georgia in 2020 and the maintenance of those records. So now that they have the records, if anything is altered or a myth in the current records that just got seized, it's like any of these big crimes. We used to say back during Watergate that the cover-up is worse than the crime. Okay, if they've done active measures to cover up what was done to steal the election in 2020, that's the kind of stuff that comes out, especially when you have insiders that are telling you, well, they did this on such and so date. This is where to look. Now that you know where to look, it's a whole different story, and it can pop right to the top. They're in deep kimchi in Georgia. And, we have experts. One of them that's probably the best in the world at this point in time is on our coalition team. And I'm sure that he'll be called on at some point within the legal side of this to add his expertise, but he did much of the work that laid the groundwork, and you can see it even in some of the analysis that was done since the raid. We know some of the information that has been reviewed already, and his procedures and materials have been utilized to get to this point. So there's we know that they're in serious deep kimchi, and the problem is this. Georgia is a domino, but you have several states where the fix was in, and so Pennsylvania.
Sorry, but you said in each one they have specific what?
Well, there's about a half dozen states that are the worst of the worst in what was done to the 2020 election. And those states are other dominoes that after you have now had the domino tipping over at Georgia, that leads to Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Remember Darleaf up in Michigan putting out the memos, actually more than one, concerning a source and investigative work that they were doing showing foreign interference in the Michigan election process there in 2020. That stuff hasn't quite found a home yet, but it's still out there. Okay. So Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada. Look, Nevada. Oh my gosh. Talk about a shit show. You just have no idea. These central vote counting centers and all the craziness out there. As you go through these states, Wisconsin, oh my gosh. As you go through these states where these things are going on, and then there's a lot of other peripheral states, including, of course, California and other places. Now, the investigations are going to widen out. This was a shot not across the bow, but into the engine room of the 2020 fraud. And it's now, as far as I'm concerned, and most people that I deal with, it's now a fait accompli that you'll begin to see the arrests happen shortly. And that's important for context, because what it means is the public first is being brought up to speed on exactly what happened 2020. It will be undeniable within the evidence presented, and therefore virtually impossible to make with a straight face the argument that continues to be made in the media and by the various players that Trump is wrong about the fact that there was a theft in the 2020 election. Just for example, I saw a AOL article uh,
Oh, we're losing them. We're losing them.
of the ballot and vote information. Oh, it shouldn't. I'm just switching over into the Wi-Fi here. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so if you didn't catch that, it says, Juan, I have to know, what capacity did you operate in intelligence? Were you an intelligence chief overseas OPS, question mark? And then it says, it's how you talk and what you know. It says, I backed you from the very beginning, loyally, Captain Andrew. I said, I don't think you're going to get an answer, but...
Do you hear me now?
Yeah,
do you hear me now?
Good. You're good. All right, let me show the folks.
I'll do an advertisement for somebody. Can you hear me now?
Verizon. Can you hear me now? Good.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, all the work, the real work. Okay, I used to tease. I still tease my guys that are CIA like that they're just file clerks. Okay. You want to piss somebody off that's dedicated their life to doing that kind of work and say something like that, man, those are fighting words. But for legal reasons and like that, the real work is all done by contractors. It's kind of the way it is because they can be disavowed. And so, for example, look at the work that Patrick did. Was he a CIA officer? No, never. Was he in the employ? He has now admitted that he was in the employ, and yet during all of those intervening years where he was doing all sorts of business work and like that, he was just an asset. And so why would they use an asset as opposed to a CIA officer? Because for legal reasons and a lot of technical reasons, an officer has certain restrictions that restrict their ability to function. And a contractor, somebody that's an operative like that, has greater latitude to get things done. And so anyway, yeah, it's sometime we'll talk on that stuff. But we have a lot of people. Look, for example, it's just switching on the.
Okay.
It's just switching off the Wi-Fi.
Right.
It should be fine momentarily as I get around the corner of the building here. There's a pretty good spot over here that I like.
I gotta tell you, Juan, I'm not really happy with you. I'm not really happy with you right now, buddy. It is 8 degrees where I'm at, and you're showing me the friggin' beach in Hawaii. Thank you very much. 8 degrees. It was -2 this morning when I took my son to school.
I gotta tell you, I was talking with Roseanne Barr yesterday, and I was gonna go buy one of her places here. She sold her farm, but she still has another place here. And I was taunting her to come on over and join Jen and I, and said, well, you can stay with us if you don't, can't go home or whatever. You don't want to be out there in the middle of nowhere. And I was telling her the temperature, and I guess where they were at in Texas, it was going to be like 17 degrees or something.
Oh yeah.
And but they're filming. And by the way, let me just do a quick little blurb for her. She's filming right now a 6-part series, and her co-star is Randy Quaid. Okay.
Oh, come on.
And so the outtakes on this are just epic. Apparently, and I got the word that the studio that's doing this is just so pleased with what they're seeing that they want her to sign up to do another shot. And I think she was getting a bit exhausted as any of us would be. She's no spring chicken, and it can be very exhausting. But she had this idea for a series that she wanted to do, and a group liked it and took it on and funded it and put serious money into it. And it's a crapshoot. You just don't know what you'll end up with. If the film team, if the actors can work together, get along, whatever, and you have a script, but it takes on a life of its own, sometimes good, sometimes bad, right? So it's a real crapshoot. Well, apparently, and of course, you never know till it's finally edited, but everybody involved is just super excited about what they're getting as far as the end result. And she's really enjoying it. So I'm hoping that when they finish filming here in a few weeks, that she'll reconsider and come on over to the islands and just take a few days. But she's moved her main residence back to the mainland, and just because she's got family, kids, and like that, and you want to spend time with them and all that. But the reason I mention that in part is, there's a shift occurring within the studios, and I have something else going right now that just came up even in the last few days, where a otherwise liberal operation, big names that you would know here within the world, have sought out and are trying to shift their stance to more moderate or even politically conservative audiences. Maybe I don't know that the right way to say it is even to use the word conservative. I think that would not be it, but to traditional values and the audiences that would favor that in the programming that they produce. And so they've got a number of projects that they're producing that would probably be readily enjoyed and sought out by an audience like yours. Well, with that in mind, they're now having to re-gauge if they want to stay in business. They're going to have to, moderate the type of material that they produce, and then they want to appeal to an audience like this to then come see it. So if they're going to produce it, we do want to support it. We want to switch, to stuff that is, I don't care, action, adventure. Look, Jen wants to watch Little House on the Prairie. I want to watch, Jason Bourne or James Bond or something like that. But there's still a certain zone in there where they get over into, like I'll use this for an example. Jen got me to watch a series that's a Korean pop thing, the Bon Appetit, Your Majesty. Okay. And so I'm being the lovey hubby. I go ahead and watch it. We've spent time in Korea, going back in a few days, and because they got a huge vote thing there, by the way. Oh my gosh. But anyway, we watch it, and one of the guys on my board on one of my operations was a Korean film producer for decades and decades. Great guy. And so we watched this thing. I actually was not very interested in. I got into it. We enjoyed it, and essentially, it's all about cooking, but it's under the guise of being like a Korean soap opera, right? And I actually got into it, and enjoyed it. Couldn't wait to see the next episode. So it actually was very funny, very wholesome, very fun. You look at the Korean pop stuff, even where the kids are dancing and they're doing that. It still has a 50s kind of a vibe to it. And it's there's a certain um, wholesomeness while they're still having life and enjoying life and all that. And like any culture, you got stuff that goes off the edge. And I remember stuff from the 80s when I was doing work in Asia, and some of it was pretty, over the top. But with what they're allowing within the programming and what people are seeking out, has become a very, for the most part, I think 50s 50s vibe, what we would interpret in that way. Well, they're having a lot of success here in the U.S. market. So then Jen gets me onto other cooking shows out of Korea. And so, I get handcuffed to the chair. I got to sit through it. But the Korean cooking shows, they have like master chefs from all over Korea. They're doing their competition. They're average people. The food is great, and they're really amazingly well prepped and presented shows and themes, my opinion. Now, she also wants to watch the American generated cooking shows. So we watch those shows, and you have to have people that are then the ones that are the guests or the cooks or whatever. And it is very, very politicized. And you can watch it, you can see it, and it actually is a turnoff. I've walked away, she's walked away from a number of them because they're just too hard to watch, because it's not a cooking show anymore. It has to do with various political agendas. And they have to have their token political this and token political that 5 ways from Sunday. It's just painful to watch. And I think on the numbers, the studios are seeing that. And that's why really, really, really big names in the programming world are looking for these conservative, or again, that's probably not the right word, traditional programming that isn't quite so far over the top. So I think Roseanne's work in that realm is also representative of that. Remember, she got taken out. I mean, got taken out, not just taken off, taken out.
That was ridiculous.
Back in the Obama period. And that's now coming full circle. And here she is producing something again, and they're just loving it. And they want more. They want to get her to sign another contract. She was just going to do this. I can tell you that, I don't know if she wants me to say it, but I don't care. She felt this was her swan song. And she put her heart and soul into this. She had a great idea. We talked about it. I read through the script. Jen read through it, made some comments here and there. But I thought it was a great, fun idea. But she's had so much fun, as hard of work as it is. She's no spring chicken. It's hard to get up at 4 a.m, drive to the studio, go through makeup for several hours and everything, and then get into character, make sure you got your lines down the night before. I mean, it's, you're working 20-hour days. And then by the time you get, through a 5-day week, and then by the time you get to the weekend, you're just sleeping through the whole thing like a daze to get through that production. She's been in it for, 2.5 months now, and it'll take another month to finish what they're doing. That's a grueling thing. You have to just put your whole life aside. But for somebody who that's what they do, it can be refreshing, that kind of work. If it's going the right way and it's accomplished the right thing, it can bring you back to life. And I think that's exactly what's happened with Roseanne. And she's actually thinking about what they want to do, in part also because if her audience enjoys it as much as she's enjoying making it, people like her and other entertainers, they live off of that. They get life off of that they're doing something that people enjoy. They enjoy to share that. And I think that's where Roseanne's at. So
Heck
it's
yeah.
going to be fun to see it happen.
Dude, let me I'm gonna read this too because, dude,
Oh, are you showing them? Are you showing them my view here?
no. Actually, I was showing them the view. I just blocked the screen just for a second. I'm gonna pull something up.
Okay,
But
go ahead. Go ahead.
what was I gonna do first? Okay, actually, that's why I pulled it off the screen because I want you to look at the camera, or not the camera.
Okay, I'm looking at it. Yeah.
Looking at the thing here. All right, let me pull it up here. And if Jen's by you, if not, I'll send you the text. You can
Nah,
show.
she
later.
went off. She's off finding grapes, I think.
Okay, gotcha. All right, ready? Where is it? All right, here it is. Let me pop it onto the screen so you can see it as well, and I'll undo it for the folks so they can see it in a second. And so if you know who this is why it's funny, because it's a chef. Here we go.
Yeah.
Hey there.
Yeah.
After so many years of celebrating my birthday as Guy, I figured this year I'd celebrate it as just a guy. Happy birthday to me. Hey there. After
Remember Guy Fieri with the spiked hair?
Yes.
That's this dude right here. That's freaking bananas. Yeah, so that's absolutely great. And another thing I wanted to just do really quickly while I have the microphone is say, because my mother, and I probably left this in a comment to Roseanne, but her sense of humor is very similar to my mother. So in that respect, my mother had a great sense of humor. And so very, very similar to Roseanne. And I absolutely love Randy Quaid. And if anybody doesn't remember, he had the whole thing with the Star Whackers. Remember that thing back in the day? Yeah. But think about it, right? I'm trying to get this up in the screen. So at the same time, they basically said that there were people going around there killing celebrities and stuff like that and whatnot. And so you look at that and you say, like, wait, the movie that Liz Crokin did about Britney Spears, and it's like these people that they're like a group of these lawyers and stuff like that, and that's what they do. They get you 5650 or whatever, the psychiatric hold, and then they got to get a conservatorship come in, and it seems to me like that's what they did to old Randy there. But this thing just says really quickly, it says Roseanne Barr and Randy Quaid have been working on a new comedy series, said that he is the leading man. It is being written by Roseanne with other collaborators, been described as a short run 4 to 6 episode show with a tone somewhere between The Roseanne Show and The Sopranos, centered on a quirky small-town character featuring adult humor, with Quaid potentially playing a character like a sheriff or leading comedic role opposite Roseanne Barr. I mean, dude, I think that would be absolutely freaking hilarious. So anything that they're both in, I'm down for. And Christmas Vacation, Cousin Eddie, I know everybody looks at him and says, Independence Day and stuff like that, but he's been in so many movies too, but he's always Eddie to me.
Well, and the audience here can look at Randy and his presentation and contemplate who he's supposed to be impersonating. But within that context, by the way, let me just add this: a huge shout out. Jen and I are a team, and what has occurred over the last many years would be vastly different, in my opinion, for this audience and other audiences beyond just myself, if she wasn't right there with me. That said, where Roseanne made a comment to me, and she took extra trouble to nail it down, Randy Quaid's wife has been just fantastic and has been a huge behind-the-scenes contributor and is apparently just a hoot. So we're hoping we're going to get a chance to visit the set and compare some things, there on the set. But at the end of the day, he should not be considered, just because we know Randy. I don't think the audience necessarily knows that much about his wife, but that may become more of a component down the road. And by the way, it's Randy's brother, Dennis, that played Reagan in the Reagan movie. And when we went to watch the premiere, Mike Reagan and I sat together during the movie, and then Randy sat one seat over from. And after the movie, I did have to pause, and you know, Jen would say I got a little teary-eyed or something, but I did comment to Dennis that it was exactly the way I remembered it. Certain of the events and personalities like that, it did a fantastic job. What a great family within the acting community. Even because remember, to even decide to do the Reagan role is maybe like Caviezel deciding to play Jesus. You're going to become a target if you take on certain roles, and they'll try to box you in for the rest of your career. And it's very hard to, if Hollywood wants to go after you for accepting a certain role, they'll go after you. And then they'll try to fawn off on you other roles that would then destroy your image, so that you, like John Wayne said, always play the good guy. But then at the end of his career, he did play a kind of a different character in one of his detective roles, and he said, it was just part of finishing his career in Hollywood because they weren't giving him the other parts anymore, and
Definitely get
needed
blackballed.
to get blackballed, and he needed to get one more under his belt to pay the bills. But that's been Hollywood. Is the pendulum swinging back? I believe so, and I believe that a huge part of the push is coming out of specifically Korea. If you look at the impact Korea is having, the leverage into programming here in the U.S. and even across Asia, Korea is leading the way. And so I give a huge shout out there within the that community, even the programming. And by the way, here's the deal: you got all these channels you can choose from. Netflix, Amazon, all the other stuff. The Korean channels have been ones that consumers have been going to harder and harder. Now, the way that they would interpret that is that that's the Korean community going to their own stuff. But when you look at the numbers, that doesn't hold up. It's number of other communities doing that viewing, preferring the type of programming that they're presenting. And that says a whole bunch right there. So they're trying to move programming back to a direction where people are voting with their feet. They just aren't willing to watch. Just like, I don't even have to say anything. Jen will start a cooking show. It's here in the U.S. and see certain of the players and how they're presented. She's like, I'm not watching that. And I don't have no interest. And even it's interesting because I hear her conversations with other people on stuff from time to time, and we talk to customers from time to time, and I'm getting similar types of feedback, really unsolicited on some of the stuff. So I think that is a tone, a tenor that's taking place that may not yet be commonly acknowledged, except that behind the scenes, the people that need to make money off of producing stuff are recognizing where the money's at and where the advertising's at. Look, how much longer are these medical companies going to be able to dominate what the programming is here in the U.S. by buying the programming on all these mainstream media outlets? It's like a money laundering operation to continue the programming of America through, what you get to see because the advertisers choose it, those little clubs. That's coming to an end. And especially, I bring it all back, let's come full circle to the vote situation. As we get to the truth of what happened in 2016, Russia, the attempt to cook the vote, the involvement directly and the supervision by former President Obama from the Oval Office while he was still president to cook the election in 2016. And when they failed, to continue during all of President Trump's first term to do the setup to derail the election in 2020. And then upon success, to penalize everybody they possibly could, to villainize them, to bankrupt them, to fraud the public about what exactly had occurred and was occurring, so that they could lock in 2024 and beyond. And they didn't succeed. And now what you're watching this very second, by the way, I've got a great view here if your audience is seeing it. But
yes, we are seeing it. Thank you very much. 8 degrees.
Yeah. But I didn't see it on my screen. I was going to say I want to make sure you guys get to enjoy that. But
rub it in.
Yeah. By the way, yesterday we were on the deck and we had some whales that were feeding at sunset. It was just, and they came in so close. I snorkel in a certain area and the edge of the reef is right there. They were coming right up to the edge of the reef and hanging out for about 2 hours. And it was just epic. So a lot of fun. But anyway, I think that we have to look past. I could get into all the details of what happened, like in the last couple days' events concerning the depositions and all that, getting all the minutiae. You're going to get that a lot of other places. I'm trying to give the tone and tenor of where we're at within the country and what's coming next. Look, the people that cooked the elections 2016, 2020, tried to cook them 2024, they know that they're losing their grip, their control over the broad public. They're losing it in numerous categories. Now, this is important for this audience. If you've stuck with us this long, I just want to coach you through this a little bit. It's like coming out, you're in the third quarter. Are we winning or losing? Okay. Where's the momentum going? The bad guys are on their heels. Now, for example, just in the last few days, and I've had to do this a number of times, but especially here just in the last few days, I have one particular person I'm thinking about who may very well be listening right now. Absolute professional. Head of the game in so many categories. And I'm actually thinking of another one that everybody in this audience would know the name of, has done huge events across the country. And they're sitting there moping and groaning, I'm done, it's not happening fast enough, Trump's failing, and he's, we voted for him and he didn't get it done, and I'm just over it, I'm just done with it, and they're just crying in their beer. And I'm like, talk about losing your way at the most critical moment. Are you kidding me? Seriously. And then they're speaking ill about President Trump and things, the way they're happening. And look, I hear it directly from people, even, let's just say Justice Department, 130,000 employees. And talk about fighting an uphill fight, swimming upstream, and it's Niagara. You got to get over without a fish ladder. Okay, tough. Because how many people has Trump actually gotten into the Justice Department? You're talking a few dozen, and then we're running into all this opposition, and then some of the players that hold the most strategic positions are actually members of secret handshake groups that are literally behind the scenes in the globalista crowd, totally bought and paid for. Again, I've said to this audience specifically and other audiences, The ultimate fight here in the U.S. is between the military, not all of the military, a very exclusive group with certain authorities related to nuclear and beyond, which has continuity in government authority and responsibilities, not a generic continuity in government capability responsibility, because that's there too, but you can misinterpret, you can miss the whole ship if you just look in broad terms. It's a very narrow, precise group that's operating within that continuity in government operation. And within that zip code, remember Trump had all the generals assembled there in Virginia a few months back. And then he says to them, I am 45, 46, and 47. Now, those generals, a few of them laid a turd right there in their pants. Okay, you saw them walking from you when they left. What in the is he talking about, 46? They're like giving the slant eye to each other. Did I hear him right? Did he just misspeak? Is he like on pills or medication right now? He was essentially speaking to a precise audience and clarifying for that audience that they may not have been read in as it was occurring because they were not on the other side of the portal. But just to clue them in, within that specific authority, military and nuclear and beyond, he was in fact still 46. Remember, he never acknowledged having lost the 2020 election.
Yeah.
He never said, okay, I'm out, he's in, I lost. He got on Air Force One and left and did not attend the inauguration. Okay. So within certain authorities, he was absolutely correct to tell that audience of military generals and admirals that he, in fact, was 46 and then 47 now. The fight is between that specific zip code within the military, not all of the military being read in on this. That fight is with the other group that claims to have continuity in government authority, which is Senior Executive Service, a creation by executive order under the Jimmy Carter presidency. And by the way, who put that all together? George Bush, who was head of CIA at the time, and it was a response to the Church Committee hearings where the intelligence agencies led by CIA were outed and pantsed for a lot of the corrupt criminal activity that they were involved in against the law, unconstitutional activity. And nobody went to jail, by the way, including and especially USAID operations, which, of course, Trump addressed right off the bat this term. So within that thing, you're watching a challenge even into the various agencies. What happens with SES? They go into agencies like the Justice Department, and they plum pick senior officials who then become SES officers with dual authority. The agency that they're working in, say Justice Department, and Senior Executive Service, and to get an added retirement plan, added benefits, added salary. Well, if you're getting additional salary beyond the agency that you're directly working for in the open, who are you really answering to? Well, the one that's paying you back behind the scenes, that's bringing you on board to do a little extra, look a different way, to address issues a certain way, okay? SES is serving a role hijacking
They're in
the
every
operations of
every
the government of
department.
the United States.
Oh, sorry, Juan. They're in every
That's okay.
department too, right? They have like a leader in the SES above everybody, right? Like the Attorney General, the FBI Director. That's true. I mean, that's what I heard years ago, so I'm not sure if that's fact or not.
Yes, yes. In fact, every um, station chief throughout the CIA is SES. They're on the SES payroll. Every um, FBI office senior supervisor is SES. So that there's nothing happens anywhere that they haven't got a tentacle into to pull the strings, get a little extra information, twist the way an investigation is conducted somehow. That's the way that whole thing works. And that's who Trump's really fighting. It's this hidden hand of relationships, association, actions, budgets that he and the American people are having to fight. And by the way, their tentacles go into the elections and the judges on the payroll of SES, finding a way to make a decision that favors not going forward with cases related to elections. They got a guy they can call, they can bring in, they can have a secret conversation. When Trennis Evans, my good buddy, was a J6er, was at a critical place in his case, exposing a lot of the corruption and fraud within the investigative side over at FBI on the J6 stuff. They literally set up a circumstance where he was supposed to go out and pick up some personal property that they were holding. And it was all a ruse. They didn't want to give it back to him just to give it back to him. It was a play to get him to a location where they could have a little talk with him. And so the FBI officers that he's dealing with play good cop, bad cop. And then the one that wants to play the good cop says, look, privately, he gets them all alone, just him and Trennis. I can make this all go away. We know you're a good guy. I don't want you to have to go through this. I don't want your family to have to go through this any longer. Look, we could really use some eyes and ears into this Patriot community and the J6 stuff. And, I think you could help us. And if you would, I can make this case go away. I can see to it that, all of your assets are returned to you and, you get your money released and things like that. And Trennis is like, you can? Yeah, I mean, what's your role over at the FBI? You can get a judge to stop the prosecution of me. How can you make that go away? Oh, we got ways. We can get it done. You just give me the word. All I need is you to give me the word, and we can get it done. Why don't you just work with me, and I'll help you out. And then he says to Trennis, look, I can even get you some money. I know you've been really strapped because of everything you've gone through for your family and all that. Because Trennis was a contractor making big money doing, building and renovations and like that. He wasn't making, McDonald's burger flipper money. He was making serious bank. And so here he is, unable to function and work and do stuff for quite a while. So, the guy says, look, here's what I can do. I can get you 30 grand a month cash if you work with us. And just give me a little information here and there on some of the J6 stuff and the Patriot community. And I'll take care of you. And Trennis says, you can? Crap, if that ever came out, I mean, gosh, I'd love the money. But if it ever came out, they'd kill me. People would kill me. No, it'll never come out. It'll never, ever come out. Well, how are you going to do that? Somebody's going to talk? No. There won't be any records. What do you mean? Somebody in the FBI isn't going to say something? Somebody at the FBI isn't going to eventually turn or want to out me or something like that? No. no record, no information will be on record at the FBI. There's no check going to be cut to you. I can get you 30 grand a month cash. And there's no record of it. Well, then he says, well, yeah, but like the IRS is going to come after me then because they're going to see me spending all this money. I can't account for where it came from. Somebody will come after it. No, don't worry about it, Trennis. We'll have an IRS agent school you in how to receive and spend the money in such a way that nobody will ever audit you or find anything. You'll be 100% clean. No problem. I'll have an IRS officer school you in how to do that. Really? Why? Because the money wasn't going to come from the FBI. It was coming from SES, Senior Executive Service. Even other FBI agents, you know, I've got a pretty good bank of folks that have, they're ready to go back to work at the FBI, but they've left under one reason or another, or been pushed out, and they're ready to talk about SES, FBI personnel on the SES payroll and what they're doing and have been doing. And even within that community of former FBI officers and personnel, they're the first ones to say, you got to go get SES. You got to take them out, got to take them off the playing board because of exactly what Trennis experienced. They're not working for FBI. They may be on the FBI's payroll, but they're actually working for SES, and they're part of a much bigger team. That's this thing that's going on through agency after agency and the military. And that's the real fight that we're in right now to get this. And then internationally, the related group, which is Serco, run out of London, in the city of London, and operating within the corporate community, the Davos community, and the political communities across many nations. That's the fight that we're actually in. But we are gaining a lot of ground at this exact second. And if you remember, when Trump was first inaugurated in this second term, within the first hour, he did a bunch of executive actions and executive orders. And one of them was to fire 9,000 SES employees. Day one, hour one of returning to the presidency. You don't think they felt that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And that was just an opening salvo. The ones that remain, fights on. And now what I believe is part of what's going to be coming in this whole fight over the 2020 vote. 2020, it's not over yet.
Hey, I got a question from you from a longtime fan of yours and a good friend of mine as well about a particular person, influencer. I don't know if he's a billionaire still or is he not. So would be the correct terminology to call this guy Vivek Ramaswamy, or is it Vivek Ramaswampy? What is your take on Vivek?
You know, let me just answer it this way. I don't have any ground truth there. I don't have any special knowledge there.
Okay.
And even if I did, and I think it's probably obvious to the audience if you get right down to it, anybody that's kind of heard me over a long period of time, I'm pretty reticent to, I'm not the Patriot Police.
Yeah.
And I give room because a lot of people, I've experienced it myself. You got people out there that claim all sorts of things that I've said or done, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I see stuff where people create a clickbait memo or something that's allegedly from me, and it's a composition of things that they allege that I've said, but with a tweak or a twist to it, usually aimed to get them to buy something, or to look really credible. But when you actually read it, I didn't say that at all. I didn't push that angle at all, really. And they've taken it maybe out of context or pushed it harder than what I was doing. I was trying to give a zone or something, okay? And they, tweak that into some specific thing. I don't attack that. I just I think the audience, we have an adult audience here. We're all big kids. And people need to weigh things through. And even if you hear me explain something, describe a particular thing that I think is going on or that people should be doing, you still have to do your own due diligence. And this audience should be extra sensitive. You're all pretty mature as a group, especially here in this specific audience. You don't need a guru. You're all adult enough, advanced enough, educated enough that you can make pretty important decisions on how to run your life better than somebody else can do for you. And in fact, that's part of the Maverick Americana thing. Every man a sovereign, every man king of his own household. Women who are astute and sharp enough that they don't need a man just to, comfort them to do the next thing, that they're pretty sharp all on their own. They enjoy it. And all of us, just like me with Jen, there's a lot of important business decisions and she'll dive right in and give me her 2 cents worth. And, usually she's right on the cash. And if not, we have a conversation. By the way, sometimes fairly New Yorker. No, I'm telling you, it's got to be this way. No, I'm telling you, you're not listening to me, But that sparring is actually pretty healthy within some certain range, okay? I've benefited immensely. This audience has benefited because she's able to hold her own ground to make sure I'm getting it or understanding something or listening to some point or information she has and weighing it properly. But I think that's most of this audience. We've all grown together over the last decade, and what the bad guys are really struggling with right now is the pendulum is coming back. It's swinging the other way. I talked about Hollywood or the production studios, the content people. One of the last ones to fold will be the news services. But you know what? With things like Georgia, where they have gotten away with saying things like the fraudulent claims by President Trump that the 2020 election was stolen. The proven fraud that President Trump keeps articulating, they're not going to be able to say that continuously forever. They're losing that ground, and a larger and larger audience isn't buying into that. Even with, and by the way, think of Minnesota. I was describing this get in your face part of the playbook. The person that was shot here in Minnesota just the other day, 2 or 3 days earlier, had been aggressive with the ICE officers and been in their face. He was already in their book, if you will, as a known party who was being extremely aggressive in engaging with the ICE personnel, and that they had to be careful of. And by the way, there's people, he had a right to carry a weapon. He had a concealed carry permit and other stuff. Okay, just so you know, in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, if you carry a weapon, you must carry two other things with it. If you have a permit, you have to have your permit on you. And you have to have valid ID, that you can be identified with. Okay. He didn't have his ID on him, and he didn't have his permit on him, and he's carrying the weapon. He was already in violation of the law. So, as just a starter, but even in principle, he was there looking for a fight, and he got it. He was looking for trouble, and he got it. For comparison, and I know there's some people in the audience. It's not a huge number, I don't believe, but there's some people in the audience that are struggling with this hard. Look at Texas. In this same period that there's been direct engagement in Minnesota and in Minneapolis to go in and take some of these very, very, very known, well-documented, dangerous people out of the population for cause in Minneapolis, take them off the streets. In Texas, they have removed 10 times as many people. And you haven't had the same types of problems with these engagements, these contests with the ICE personnel going in and taking people into custody. Why is that? Because law enforcement has been working with the ICE personnel going out and locating these persons, taking them into custody, and then doing whatever is appropriate in each case, processing them accordingly. Well, in Minnesota, they're not getting cooperation because the senior leadership from the governor on down, the mayors, are fighting them and directing personnel not to cooperate. And so that's creating a conflict that is serving a certain purpose. And that's got a lot to do with doing this enforcement properly. And they're not going to win. It's silly to think they will, but I don't think we're done. There's a fallback that's going to occur here, and ultimately there are about 14 cities that the mayors and governors in the states together are continuing to fight this. We're not done as we go through this in Minnesota. There's other states that similarly have to have their conflict. And by the way, remember, one of the reasons it hasn't been more deadly in these immigration apprehensions is because on day one, while President Trump was still in the inaugural process, 15 minutes after he swore the oath, I was getting texts from military personnel, multiple. Hey, I just got orders. Hey, I just got orders. Hey, I just got orders. And I have to report immediately. And then when they did report, where they were dispatched to was as support for local and federal law enforcement officers going out and taking into custody the gang leaders of several gangs around the country, Trend Araga and others, as terrorist groups, which he signed the orders, Trump signed the orders on several of them, designating them as terrorist organizations, taking those people into custody. And then you'll remember that a few days later, after those people were taken into custody, and by the way, people forget this, several of them visibly, demonstrably, with video and photo documentation, taken to Gitmo for processing. Okay. But you didn't see any other public anything but, acknowledging they went to Gitmo. And what happened? They were talking. And what were they providing? They disclosed, several of these gang leaders disclosed how they were coordinating down through their ranks to bring weapons into the U.S. and to disperse bullets to locations where their gangs were concentrated around the country to further arm them. And so, for example, in one of the cases, a van is going down the road. It won't turn its high beam headlights off. So the officers, seeing this van wasn't acknowledging, they flashed him to lower his high beams off, and he didn't. They turn around, they're off duty, they go ahead and pull him over. What the hell is your problem? Well, the reason that they couldn't turn their high beams off is because it wasn't their high beams. It was the low beam, but the van was sagging with so much weight that it was making the light shine up higher and into the oncoming traffic. So it was full of bullets, lead, so heavy that, ton of bullets in this van. And they were gang members that had actually literally come up from Venezuela through the U.S. There were a couple incidences like this. Another one was a group out of Honduras and similar. And the reality is that it may have looked at the time as though they just got, a happenstance pulled over. But then when you got several of them happen within just a week or two, you obviously know that no, actually they were tracking these guys. That was the cause that was acknowledged, so that it wasn't known out through the groups immediately that they were being targeted. It looked like happenstance, but they stopped tens and tens and tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition from getting to multiple locations in the U.S. and into the hands of gang members who had the guns, needed more ammunition, and stopped it from getting there. So where a lot of the podcasters, the Patriot community, were hand-wringing that, it's going to be a war zone. We're about to go into a war zone because we're confronting the gangs and they've got guns and they're going to come kill us all and they're going to go door to door and kick the doors in and kill mom and the babies and everything else. They didn't get the chance to do it because Trump and the team were being very aggressive. They took out their leadership, got the intel, found the players that were moving the stuff, took them off the streets, and then systematically went out and started to take the worst of the worst off the streets. Now you're down to, at some level, a less coordinated, less sophisticated element that are still highly coordinated. James O'Keefe was commenting the other day that he was absolutely amazed at how complex the organizations are that are running, for example, these protests in Minnesota. And that's really true. Yeah. And by the way, you got to love James. He's got several irons in the fire. I've got some of the personnel over there at the coalition that have been dealing with him on some things that he's taken on more, and expect him to pop up in the oddest places over the next many months. I have a lot of admiration. Look at all the things that he's done. Would this movement even be in the same zip code today without James O'Keefe? You got to say a prayer of thanks and protection.
Yeah.
Protection on a guy like that. So yeah.
See that? Did you see the videos of when he went into Minneapolis and he was just basically at a red light, and it's like, oh my goodness, dude, there is so many people there, and it's yeah, it's right here. Like I'm showing a little bit on the screen too. It's like, oh, we're going to beat up ICE agents. We're gonna go beat up ICE agents, and I keep telling people, I'm like, you have to counter these people that are going out there and telling you, oh, what Trump's doing, they're just getting rid of anybody and they're asking people for papers and they're assaulting citizens. And I'm like, listen, are people being asked for papers? Yeah, because I've seen it on tape. But guess what? They're not walking down the street just going papers, papers, papers. The people that are getting asked for papers are these jerk-offs that are harassing the crap out of them. And that's why you want to harass them. They're going to harass you back because they want to see if you're legal to be here or not. And then we know that they're paid for. And then this thing right here says, basically, it's an entire network of NGOs, unions, activist groups, SEIU, Make the Road New York, independent socialist groups. And then they have all these different lieutenant governors that were in the Signal chats and whatnot. And they got really scared about that one, apparently, and deleted a bunch of Signal chats. But, Juan, I got to say, I really think, I've said this a few times, even earlier today on a show. I said, for me, they were bringing a big spotlight to Minneapolis with the whole Mike Waltz thing. Because I'm thinking, like, how would you ever bring that dude in to shore up your vote as vice president? You know what I mean? Think of you could have picked anybody else. Like, literally, even that dude with the weird thing on his neck, what was his name for, the guy that looks like Lurch there from Pennsylvania, he would have been much better than Waltz. Like, anybody would have been better than Waltz. But now you bring this guy in to, quote, shore up the vote for Kamala, and then, he's Mr. Richard Simmons jazz hand, and then what do we find out? Oh, wow, all this fraud coming from where? Right from where this guy's from. And it's like, okay, then we put it together that we know that they're being funded from NGOs, and we know the connections to the government. And essentially, I bring it back to the drop number 14 from the Q Post, where it talks about what does it take to engage legally, or what must be completed to engage, say, military intelligence over 3-letter agencies. And it obviously goes even much deeper than that, but essentially what you've been talking about for the last, couple hours here, which is that they literally went to take over the government. And it, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, but they're American citizens working for our government went to take out the next presidency. That's treason. It's like the worst thing you could possibly do. And we got him dead to rights. And he said it so many times, Juan, which is why I love it. It's like, we caught them all. Nobody could have done what I've done, but it's bad. That Minneapolis area is bad, dude.
Well, let me just add this for the people in Minneapolis. I've mentioned this before, but only once or twice. I remember in the 70s that Minneapolis was still the heart of the Bible Belt. And you could go out throughout the region. Churches in Minneapolis all had youth camps in Wisconsin and adjoining areas around Minneapolis. The kids, the vast majority of school-aged kids, high schoolers, etc., they all went to church every Sunday. They were there at the youth camps. Some of the biggest Christian groups originated out of Minneapolis. Some of the biggest radio shows across the country were networked out of Minneapolis. I had a friend whose father was a huge national radio host within the Christian community and broadcast from there all the way back to just after World War II up until the early 70s before he retired. And what happened? What happened to Minnesota? Well, let me tell you what happened. Within this satanic attack that has been leveraged upon America, they didn't just go to the periphery. Some of these waves coming in right now are just huge. Way out at the line out there where the reef begins. I mean, it's amazing. And guys were out there surfing. They had to stop here just a while ago because the waves got too big out in that area. So anyway,
I think I just heard the salt machine go down the street.
Yeah. But what happened was there was a very real focused attack to take out America, if you will, at the heartland. And by the way, let me just, I mentioned this earlier today on an interview I did with Nino, but I want to say it to your audience also. People in the audience here, if you would go look on some of the search engines and look at screaming hope imagery. Now, that is a particular segment of the satanic worshiping community, and that are a wing of the cult, if you will. It'd be like, SS within the Nazi party. I mean, it sounds, it's too many people, Nazi. It's just thrown around too flimsily. But in this case, it probably actually specifically applies. A number of the players involved in the vote attack, election attack within America, are members of that cult group, and memorialize it with tattoos on various areas of their body. There's reasons why those tattoos are in very specific regions. It has meaning, and they can be seen if they'll accidentally flash an arm too far or something. Now, the reason I raise that is this. The attack within the vote is at the core of the takeover, not just of America, but of the world. If you're trying to take control of planet Earth, even the naming of the vote machines as the company Dominion, that has a certain meaning, and it ties back, all of the countries under the British Royal Authority, Commonwealth countries. They're considered, many of them, to be Dominion countries, and essentially you're a serf within their system. Okay, right to rule by blood type of stuff and all that. But there's a component here that have aggressively worked together, coordinated their actions to take control of the vote systems around the world, and then to install leaders who suit their purposes. Now, you mentioned Walz, for example. One of the most bizarre stories ever to come out with any political candidate ever in the history of the country is the one about Walz years ago, apparently ingested so much horse sperm that it was a fatal or near fatal dose, except for the medical intervention that occurred. Can you imagine any circumstance where anybody that you would want to vote for into office would ingest horse sperm in the first place, and then a quantity great enough that it threatens your life, and then people tried to poo-poo it as not being true, and others came back, no, this is real, this really happened. Who is this guy? And what's the rest of the circumstances? And then you wonder, are we even getting the whole story here? And then you go down through the ranks with other people, answering an ad in the newspaper to help them become a candidate, and they're working in the bar. They're doing, dating as an escort, and they suddenly find themselves in politics, and all the other information goes away. Remember, even Obama, we had the guy that came forward and talked about the fact that he, as a male prostitute, had serviced Obama, and gave very detailed information on this. And
Larry
then
Sinclair.
That's right. And
Well,
the house is my God.
in due fairness, I think at the time, well, at least in the first discussion, I believe at the first time he made it sound like he was in town for business. So I don't know if he was a prostitute at that time specifically, but just really quickly, 15 seconds. He basically said he was in town. He had a limo driver. Hey, limo driver, anybody that could show me around town? Hey, yeah, I know a guy. Comes back up, and this guy happens to be who he now knows as Barack Obama. And after a while, Larry said to him, boy, I sure could go for a line of something. And Obama said, cocaine? He goes, yeah. And then I gave him $250. And then he came back out and gave me an 8 ball. And we started doing lines, and he started smoke. So he said, on top of that, that Obama not only was doing cocaine, but he was smoking crack. And then he said that Larry, put his hand on Obama's thigh, which was initiating what he wanted to do. And then he said, I performed oral sex on Barack Hussein Obama. And then he even made a testimony of it, right? He wrote up a deposition, and then they went after him because they said, he did this crime or whatever. But I love like how he came out in the whole thing, and he was like, listen, first off, they're going to say I did this. Yes, I did that, and I was, a bad guy when I did this. What I'm telling you right here is absolutely truth. I have the phone records. I have like receipts. The dude had everything. Larry Sinclair had everything. And Juan, really quickly too on that one, did you ever hear anything about, because I can't really, I really never went to look too deep into it, but I've always heard murmurings or whatever that there were some gay men that were happening to kind of go deadsies in the Chicago area before he became, I don't know if it was senator or if it was president, but they said essentially.
No, senator. Yeah.
And like people that were going into the bathhouses or the gay bars or whatever, that's why they were calling him Bathhouse Barry or whatever. So you had heard about that before?
Yeah, that came out. And of course, the pastor of the church where Obama and
oh, damn America.
Shell attended and were married was well known as performing gay marriages. And so Michael Lavoy Robinson, who there's no pregnant pictures of, was this guy that that pastor married them, and the rest of the fraud continued on. So how do these people get into office? By the way, Obama was a creation of CIA, and from his youth, before he was even born, because the mother and grandparents were on the payroll. And so that's a long story. I've talked about it many times before. We've had these people foisted on us through the vote fraud, but the point I was going to make here is that these aren't just people with political ambitions. There for money, just to have power. This is literally a satanic cult operation that is being performed right there before all of us. And a number of the players that supervise this, foisting on America, including and precisely targeting Minneapolis, St. Paul, are tied to this satanic operation, I would contend. And the reason that I'm saying that right now with emphasis is because of all the regions that should have seen this coming, that should have had their defenses up, their hackles up. It's that community in Minneapolis, St. Paul, who didn't recognize the attack, were, somehow vulnerable to that attack, and should now engage in a non-conventional way. I'd literally encircle the city, prayer warriors, and steal the power from the demons. Okay, neutralize the demonic energy, because it's a spiritual war there. I think maybe we should recognize it as more a spiritual war than even the visible war that the media is showing to us with these points of engagement. There's something else going on there that has captured control, and it started with and became worse with putting people into office who weren't actually the will of the people locally, as though it was through fraudulent votes, and then turning the direction of that region um, over time away from a godly perspective. I don't think I'm stretching it by saying it that way. I think that's really
From it.
what happened. And you can look, for example, I have friends that have a church camp that I support up in Wisconsin. In this exact little area around a particular lake where they're at, there used to be 4 church camps that ran huge operations through the year with participating partner churches, all tied to Minneapolis, St. Paul, where the kids would come out all through the year, church camps, and do all sorts of things, work camps, all sorts of things. It was a great experience for the kids, tied to their church life. 3 of those 4 camps have been dissolved in the last decade and a half and no longer exist. They've been turned into apartment complexes. One of them has become a Muslim retreat and gun training center, okay, for, a Muslim group. The church has lost its saltiness, if you will. And the one that remains, is doing well, but has struggled going through this transition. I'm using that as a gauge to the health of the church as a community, the larger body, if you will, within Minneapolis, St. Paul, and saying that the churches in that region, a lot of the recording labels and performers used to come out of that region. I don't hear any of them anymore. It's virtually silent from that region because they've been taken off the map, taken out. That's a terrible shame because that was Bible Belt. Okay, they didn't just die of natural causes. They died because they were attacked, weren't able to see it coming, didn't, respond to it somehow correctly, and the youth have been damaged by that within the region. And so, what's the response? I think the response is those of faith, those believers, need to engage this directly as a spiritual war, not merely a political or policing war. And the gangs that have come in there, the groups that were brought in as a targeted operation, the Somalis, the gangs out of South America and others, they were planted there as an occupying army to displace and push out the believers from that core position. And, people of conscience, nice people, they couldn't oppose it. They didn't have an angle politically. They couldn't win. I'm not throwing any stones, but they yielded ground. And now you have what you have. I think that as these people are being removed who are there unlawfully, who are not wanting to become Americanized, but instead are trying to de-Americanize that region, de-Christianize that region, which we're a Christian nation. Get over it. Our origins go back to the Pilgrims. The covenant with God, with the Pilgrims, was the beginning of the country, not the Constitution. That was a later rendering to formalize much of the relationship between the people and their government. It started with a churched people, and so if we're going to address this conflict properly, we're going to address those types of issues. And then, and by the way, I started quite a bit ago, saying that I think there's a bunch of our community. There's a kind of a push, and I'm been having conversations, especially this last week for whatever reason, from great folks, folks that, in some cases, everybody in this audience would know them instantly and their work, but they're talking down about where we're at and the fight overall, and Trump's, it's not happening. It hasn't happened. Please take a deep breath. This is such a huge war, and even what just happened in Georgia is a huge domino that's going to push other dominoes over. It's a starting position. And look at over the last year, you had to consolidate certain positions. And then, yes, there's been delays. Use Venezuela as one example. The initial move on Venezuela, which had been planned, practiced, gamed out for long months. Okay, not just a few days. You fight like you train, and they trained hard to get it right and succeeded in every category. But that was delayed by a couple of factors. The one named publicly was weather. Yeah. Everything had to be exactly in place because it was so pivotal, so crucial, was so important. If the ball had been fumbled on that play, if you hadn't got, yardage on that play, it would have affected many other plays to come in a very negative way and actually slowed down next steps massively, including Iran. And so, and by the way, by intoning that we were going in there, we were doing stuff, the attack may come at any moment, and all of the things that they had to spool up, they took action, they communicated, they did all sorts of things that made it easier when the final time came. They were depleted, exhausted, distracted, and went off without a hitch. The same thing has been happening with Iran. Don't be dismayed, though, with the change-up. Trump has said repeatedly, and he's done things to demonstrate this, and he's made statements to the effect, nobody knows exactly what he's going to do next, except for him. He's keeping his own counsel. Even the raid that happened in Georgia had been gamed out, discussed, played out extensively before it actually happened. But it was only with Trump's personal authorization the night before that the play was done the next day there in Georgia. Certain triggers, certain events, he himself has retained exclusive right to do on his timing. And he's, if you remember during his first term, when they tried to set him up on Iran, and Bolton and all of his buddies, in response to this drone being shot down, which was actually two, but they only acknowledged one, huge drones, size of a 737, very expensive, worth $30 million a piece. When that happened, they got Trump all, you've got to take action. You can't let this stand. He let him go ahead and prepare a attack on Iran. And they got right up to it. It's middle of the afternoon here. It's midnight over there. Got to give authority for the jets to take off the carriers, the missiles to be let loose, etc. And so, things are ready to go. And they're in the Oval Office. Trump opens the drawer, pulls his pen out. He's got to sign it. He had told him, you can do everything, get ready, but not one move happens till I sign the authorization. Get it all set up, pick the time, and then, I sign the authorization. Nothing moves till that happens. So they're all in there. The jets are literally running on the aircraft carrier decks. And then he pulls the pen out. He's about to put pen to paper. And he asked the question of the general that put this whole thing together. Okay, I said I wanted minimum human casualties in this attack. I don't want to hit the guy working the maintenance guy. Okay, and so have we done that? Oh yes, sir. Yeah, minimum human casualties. Okay, what do we expect the death count to be when the media starts covering this tomorrow? What am I supposed to be expecting? Sir, we expect about 100 deaths as a result of this attack. Oh my gosh, 100.
Mm.
Oh, sir, it could go as high as 200, but that's our max that we think. We think it's going to be around 100, maybe a little less if we're lucky. Oh, geez, 100. And we can't get it any lower than that? Oh, no, sir. And then Bolton pipes up, somebody around him. Sir, we have to launch now. Russia and China are going to see what's going on our carriers and know that an attack's coming, and we'll lose the element of surprise. We've got to go now. You need to sign this. And Trump's delaying and asking questions. And, well, is there anything we could do to lower that? I mean, gosh, how expensive was that drone anyway? Well, sir, it was $30 million, but of course, there was two. But the replacement cost is going to be $35 million each, because they don't build them in a day, and prices have gone up. That's $70 million those guys cost us shooting that drone down. And Trump, well, we're a big country. Come on, man, $70 million. I mean, one human life, even an Iranian life, is worth more than $70 million, don't you think? I don't want to do this. $70 million a human life. Let's figure out a different way. Oh, sir, what are you talking about? No, we're not doing anything. Cancel the attack. Opens the drawer up, puts his pen back in the drawer, closes the drawer. That was the break point for Bolton. He literally stripped to gear, and other people around him who got all baited in there. Trump got them to commit who their sources and resources and contacts and everything were, because they knew that if they could get Trump to attack Iran, that the war was on, and Trump would get by degrees sucked into a larger regional war. Iran had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of missiles over in Lebanon and in Gaza, and they were ready to start the wider war. They had stuff going on in Syria that was epic, because that was their pipeline to get all those missiles into the region around Israel. They were hoping Trump would give them something that they could then push out into the Muslim world and get the war going. This cult wants World War IV. It's not World War III. We won World War III. The Soviet Union doesn't exist, okay? That happened during the Reagan administration. I got to be part of it. So, bullshit, this World War IV foundation. So with that in mind, Trump is still the same guy. He is not going to telegraph his next move clearly to anybody. That said, warnings, if you go back and look at things that Trump has said to Iran and dates and timing and all that, there's a pretty good case to be made. We're not very many hours from the hammer dropping on Iran, and we're moving everything into position. And just like Venezuela, we move stuff into position. Huge, largest fleet ever in South American history off the coast of Venezuela specifically. And then we waited and we held and we let them have to think about it. He's now moving a larger naval operation led by the Abraham Lincoln. Which carrier are you going to pick? The Ford, the biggest, whatever. No, he picks the Abraham Lincoln. It's got symbolic meaning, insurrection. And he's moving that in position with the largest naval operation in that region in history, bigger than what was done with Venezuela. But will he do a change-up? Will he go and hold? Will the leadership in Iran try to calculate what was done previously with what will happen this time? There have been numerous reports that several of the leaders have already left Iran and gone to Moscow. So we'll see what the truth of that is. You always get various conflicting reports. You can't trust all of them, even from otherwise good sources, because they get spoofed too. So we'll see what happens. But
Guessing Bibi wasn't happy about that one either. We know
well,
he wasn't.
and well, let me just add this: a huge portion of our community, this patriot community, and I'm sure they're here within this audience. Absolutely. Let me speak to you folks there that think Trump is somehow Bibi's puppet. That just is not true. When Trump did the earlier attack on Iran, he didn't do that to benefit Israel. It did benefit Israel, but he didn't do it to benefit Israel. Israel was threatening out into the world with those nuclear weapons, of which we have a couple missing nukes that are still loose right now. What do you think they were sniffing for with all the drone activity prior to the inauguration on the East Coast and across the country? And Trump was very clear. They're looking for nuclear, okay? You didn't have to guess at it. I told you what it was, but he came out and verified it at a later time. Iran is in all of these places with agitators, provocateurs, and has been. The Congo. You have 10 million people dead in the Congo. The time that Iran has been involved in doing mischief there. Think about that. 10 million people dead in the Congo, and Iran was in there running a lot of those operations on the mining stuff and like that to benefit China. Don't kid yourself. They have blood on their hands, but it wasn't just there in the Congo. They have other places across Central Africa. In South Africa, the leadership in South Africa was coordinating with Iran on a lot of their military stuff to, get ready for America showing up in the neighborhood. By the way, where did a lot of the expertise on the nuclear come from that Iran was benefiting from? Came right out of South Africa. Remember, South Africa had the makings for 7 nuclear bombs before their first stolen election happened, and they started to go off into the left world. And by the way, when Trump's done with Iran, where do you think he's going to next? He's going to South
Cuba.
Africa. Those guys need to think about what's going on there, because we have a current, fully engaged operation preparing to bring charges against the president of South Africa, a couple of billionaires, and a whole bunch of political people related to multiple crimes, including election fraud. Do you know that the practice site, I told your audience previously, but it bears repeating, the practice location servers that were used out of Serbia from the building that John Brennan is co-owner of, by the way. That building was built to fraud the vote in 2020 here in America. all of those facilities and personnel were picked up out of Venezuela, and from the Venezuela operation moved into Serbia. It was all set up. It was finished in the middle of 2019 and tested in the election in 2019 in South Africa to make sure everything was working right in preparation for the 2020 election here in the US, where those systems were engaged to cook the vote in the United States. When Georgia's information, Pennsylvania's information, Wisconsin's information, Michigan's information, Arizona's information, Nevada's information concerning the 2020 vote fraud, AOL, becomes fully public, you will see the manipulation was managed from Serbia, and that the first test of that Serbian system occurred in the South African election in 2019.
Damn. South Africa. I was going with Cuba. You're like, yep, when he's done over there, I'm like, yeah, Cuba, because we found out about the guards that were watching Maduro were Cuban dudes, and just really quickly to kind of, not that you needed it,
Cuba wasn't just there with guards. Cuba has been running Venezuela. You couldn't get a driver's license. You couldn't get your Social Security payment. You couldn't get a license to do business, anything without a Cuban approving what a Venezuelan did, just so you know.
Wow, that's bananas.
Venezuela. Yeah, go ahead.
And that's bananas. And earlier I was, as you were talking about them, essentially de-Christifying, which I don't think is a word, but that's, I just made it up.
It worked for me. I understood what you meant.
Okay. I had up on the screen in the background, the Democratic Coalition of Satan Worshippers are displaying a plaque at the Minnesota State Capitol. So I didn't really know that, to be honest with you. Just like I didn't know that Detroit, Michigan was like very, very rich years ago. I had no idea that Minnesota in general, or that area, was a very big hotbed of Christianity. So as you were talking about that earlier, I was mentioning, or I had up in the background, the Democratic Coalition of Satan Worshippers are displaying a plaque at the Minnesota State Capitol and thanking Governor Tim Walz for allowing the spread of Satanism. These people are literally demonic. And then when you go into the drops, these people are evil. Symbolism will be their downfall. So yeah, you spot on about that one.
Let me just say this to this audience. Knowing this, you're getting, if you're in the area or you have relatives or you're from that area, because a lot of people just pick up and leave. Here's where I think a divine gauntlet is thrown down for you. You're getting exactly what many people asked for, prayed about, dreamed of in a prior generation or two when they saw the assault coming. You have leadership, beginning with President Trump and many around him, including this patriot community right here, who have now engaged. And you're going to see a lot of the elected leadership taken out of power. You're going to see the people that were fraudulently planted, targeted into your neighborhoods, removed for cause, and a gap. It's like the biblical descriptions of a demon being cast out, literally. But then once the house is clean, which you're going to get shortly, it's happening right now before your eyes, a deliverance process. Then, and the demon's leaving screaming, by the way, do no harm on the way out. And that's why a prayer is required here now, especially.
Absolutely.
When this is occurring, you cannot leave a vacant space. It must be filled. MacArthur, at the end of World War II in Asia and Japan, immediately called that the churches not just Catholic. Most people mention the Catholic because that's a big part of it. He said churches and the Protestant were also heavily there. By the way, Hiroshima was the most Christian population in Japan, and that was the first place bombed. So you got to wonder who's making those decisions precisely. Was it just an accident? But the churches responded and filled that gap because the Japanese people had this emperor worship that was instilled in them, intergenerationally for eons, and that he was no longer considered a god for many people. That threw them into some type of disarray, and it took time for people to readjust and understand. And so you actually do have a very strong church community, not just in Japan, but in Korea also, as a result of that call and out through the region and like that, and even into China. Some great Christian leadership in that era that evolved and had, really affected the lives of millions. But with that in mind, if you're going to go through a deliverance process in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the church needs to rise up. People of faith need to prayerfully consider, are they being called to come in and reoccupy the land that's been stolen from them in almost a missionary sense, to deny quarter to that satanic community. And look, I'm talking church to a significant part of our audience that just doesn't, that's not where they're at. They don't want to hear that sort of thing. But look, you can't deny there's a spiritual aspect to all of this fight. The people that we're fighting, they're very seriously, openly worshipers of Satan. So if you're not acknowledging that part of it, if I wasn't to speak about that, that's how things like what's happened in Minneapolis happen, because you're naive to the mentality of the people that you're having to fight. In a know your enemy era, you have to know how they think, what's going on in their minds. And I think that's a component that may not be acknowledged. It's neglected, but it's very real. Hillary Clinton, openly a member of the Wing Coven. Okay. There's probably many, many more that have that type of an association and alliance that you're not aware of. And it's right there, but they're not as demonstrative, or you're just not looking. And it's happening right before your eyes.
Absolutely. It is too, dude. And hey, I don't want to keep you forever because it's probably getting close to dinner time or lunch. Yeah, dinner time because you're 5 hours behind me. But I did want to get.
I'm missing fresh grapes. I need to go get some more grapes. But go ahead, I'm listening.
Fresh grapes. I'm freezing my ass off. I still have to shovel if I want to make some burgers or some chicken on the grill. I need to shovel about 5 feet of snow that's like around it because it's all from like my patio area. So yeah. But I did want to get your
I can remember, I used to ski heavily and instruct and like that. And I remember, I had Porsches at the time, and the thing that just soured me on them is that they're air cooled. You couldn't get those suckers to warm up when they're idling. You come back from a long day of skiing and you're like freezing your butt off, and then you're going down the hill coasting because you can't drive fast, right. and it's so that thing. So you're getting the cold air. I'd be halfway, home before the car would actually get warm.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Bringing my son to school today because I'm like, let me turn on the heat. and because it's literally, like a 6 or 7 minute ride to his school. And by the time we get there, -2, it's not warm yet, because he's like, hurry up. He wants to be there, early, which we were, but it's still like it's literally pushing out cold air. It's like, do you want to put
Oh
out
my
anything?
gosh.
Like what it is. But so dude, the last couple of days, is this are we looking at the throes of the banking system fighting back versus the gold and silver market, because they
Oh,
both
I'm
went
glad you asked me that.
crazy yesterday.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Let's talk about this. It's not
and
so much yesterday.
Juan, let me give
Remember,
you one. Let me give you one little piece of
go ahead.
info too. I want to, because this is really this is really good. Um, Not only did we have these numbers that were the stuff that was basically switched around essentially, but the numbers in which they were essentially moved up to like, we had number swings of like 17 whatever million, and silver went up to like 117. So there was like these really weird numbers, and then these cuts and swings. So yesterday, it looks like a day ago, 111 went all the way down to 75 now, and I'm just looking at the regular Google thing. It's telling me 85. Now gold is 4907, when yesterday it was like 5300, almost 54, and went down, bounced back up to, we're at 4907 now. So it's going bananas, and we've talked about it at length numerous times about how that they were keeping down the price of all these things, which they're starting to rise up, which is hurting the banks. And now all of a sudden we see this. So what say you, sir?
Okay. When we say yesterday, the reality is that overnight, Thursday night into Friday morning, I told audiences numerous times, and I think I may have even told it to your audience the last time we had a talk, that we were going to hit resistance at 90, and it was going to be floating up there, pushing 90 and bouncing off that. That was a fear. The next one was at 120. And I called those numbers at each of the stair steps 6 months ago. And so people go back and find that history. Now, that's exactly what happened. How could I possibly know those particular numbers? In part, it had to do, I know it wasn't prophetic. It's not being a super seer, genius, everything. No, it was based on when the contracts expired and what the weight was within the silver contracts being run around and pushed around through the bank system and like that. The lead player on this has been Chase, okay, and Morgan Stanley Chase. And they've been the primary manipulator within the silver market, but there's been a tag teaming operation with other banks involved, as well as some really big money groups around the world, this club, if you will, of globalista. And so at the very tail end of December, a report that was generated through the month of December was finalized in the days before Christmas and disseminated within senior management at Chase, where I was allowed to see something in that window to understand what the logic and thoughts were. And what was internally described and is memorialized in other documents at other banks, according to contacts I have, communications I've had, is that within Chase, they see silver by the third quarter, end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, somewhere in the 420 range.
Damn.
And I had told your audience and other audiences where I thought, based on an industry pricing, where the pain point is for people using silver industrially, is down there at about 280. That the triggers that on the mining side would then come into play also to reintroduce mining here in the U.S. is also in that 280 to 300 range. part of the logic there, by the way, is Trump has placed tariffs on everything coming into America, including silver from countries that produce silver. We are turning back on industry in America, production, manufacturing, not just office jobs, pushing paper, punching computers, but machines and companies with assembly lines, production lines, manufacturing of goods, high paying jobs, by the way, not low paying. And so that require skilled labor. As that happens, the need for industrial silver domestically is going to go up exponentially here in America. There was a criminal, in my opinion, operation to move manufacturing, skilled labor out of the United States to other countries, or going back to the Reagan administration and before. But especially NAFTA and things like that, Bush 1 and the Clinton stuff and all that, pushing manufacturing out of America, which then cut the heart and soul out of the middle class here, if you get right down to it. Wing technology going to Asia, Boeing, and all sorts of things similar. Mining being shut down in America and being moved to other countries because of all sorts of frauds. Trump's operations, including especially the tariff stuff, is forcing high enough prices that then it becomes worthwhile to turn the mines back on. Because there's a local need here inside the country for raw materials, of which the metals and silver is one. But it really doesn't take hold until silver's up there past, in the zone of 280. And it probably turns on, realistically, you guys want to be the most negative, and it's not happening on, probably around 240 though. And the restraint is, however, a lot of people within the industries are concerned that it takes several years to turn on a mining operation, to get these things going, these huge corporate operations going, and to get assembly lines and employees trained and everything else, get these things going. And they're afraid that by the time they start turning it on, Trump's gone. And the tariffs could come right off as fast as they came on, or faster, in which case the things that favor these industries turning on could go away, and they all lose their shirts. So they're concerned. They don't want to do it until it is well underway, or commit to it. They'll do the pre-planning. They'll start working up and looking for loans and getting permits and things like that, but it's not fully on, especially if there's a threat, a danger, a concern that Trump might get taken out before he even completes this term. So there's a lot of naysayers. So with that in mind, the pressure is on heavily because there's no domestic production and the pricing is going up radically. Now, the silver prices have been extremely suppressed, especially within the banking community with their sifting in of paper silver within the contracts, but not real silver. And so fake silver, if you will. And what happened in this period in December was everybody got the word because of things that were said behind the scenes within Treasury and like that over the previous several months, conversations Trump was having privately. And what those conversations basically said is the regulators are coming and they're going to look at the books of the banks. And the banks have been reporting, accurately, but as coyly as possible their positions on their silver holdings and how they define them and stuff like that. And so they've broadly been considering their silver paper holdings as an asset, but in reality, they're not technically a tangible asset. They're a unrealized perceived asset that can vaporize almost instantaneously. And so what in Chase's case was being warned internally was we have to dissolve these positions as quickly as possible before the regulators in this Trump world moment show up and force us to liquidate positions, okay, because they are vaporous. And with silver going up, as it has all of last year, all of the last several years, but especially this last year, the pressure based on their manipulation, their contract, was that they were losing money all the way up. They weren't, they were naked on a lot of the exposure. Oh, look at whales out here. They're going around. There's your humpback right
Cool.
there. Yeah, that's, out here you got a tourist boat, and then there's humpbacks. And like I said, they've been right at the edge of the reefs, and so here they are right at the edge of the reefs. There's a pond of them right there, and it's hard, of course, in the camera here to see it, not quite close enough. But that's why the waves are breaking, because that's where the reef is, and that the water hits that and piles high. Anyway, so what's happening is that they know that the regulators are coming, that Trump's real, that the danger of them getting exposed and forced to sell off these positions, it could wipe out these major banks. It could literally be an existential moment. They're gone.
Should have been already by now, no?
Well, but the cure can't be worse than the disease. For Americana, the impact could be pretty devastating. But getting them out of their nice little position, this is a huge operation. This is, oil tankers trying to turn in tight quarters. You got to be so careful. And you can't destroy the ability of America to do business. And taking out the big banks is not a positive thing done whimsically, okay? I don't care what everybody wants to say. So here's what happened. They got the warning. They got their marching orders to begin dissolving these positions. Now, as that's become known, and this is where scuttlebutt can be very advantageous for some of these groups, okay? So you've heard me, I've been kind of, I've been explaining what's going on, but I've also been hesitant to do a sky is falling or get in this second, it's all over tomorrow, it's not going to be worth your time like that. There's a steady march up. What happened was you had a end of the month. A lot of these accounts had to be. Oh yeah, it's over there. Yeah, you had to reconcile some positions before you got to the end of the month on some of these trades, right? So, literally, the last trading day of the month, which was Friday, in the overnight, suddenly where silver had been ramped up a couple days earlier in the week and spooked people with this huge spike of 10 points. And then people were afraid they weren't going to be able to get in there and do their business and get their position. So you had a lot of people came in and got sucked into the market. And then Lucy pulls the ball away in the overnight into the morning, just as the markets open up here in the U.S. Suddenly silver falls $35 an ounce in free fall. Okay, now let me just help everybody here. This is a really, 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 really important point. That cannot possibly in any parallel universe, let alone our universe, happen with normal trading by the public or even any single institution. What you just saw hours ago in the silver market was one of the greatest RICO fraud cases right in front of your eyes. A coordinated, very sophisticated attack on the American consumer, world consumers by a handful of traders. And you can interpret that word a couple different ways within the banking and political industry community, regulator, banking, everybody community, where it was pre-set, pre-organized, anticipated, secret handshake crowd to do that to protect certain of the players coming into this last business trading day market and allow them to get out of positions in a significant way. Now they did. Tens of trillions of dollars were lost into the market, but it was actually vaporous money. Okay. And for the average trader, and I verified even with my people, and we went through this just to make sure that I was going to be speaking accurately with your audience and others today. If you were a normal street-level trader trying to do some purchases or sales, you could sell, but you couldn't buy because the number of trades that the brokers were having to process was going so fast that they were so backed up that the average guy, and I mean, somebody trying to trade, 10 million, just couldn't get through the door to do the purchase. All of it was being manipulated within a handful of players, and that got into position, take advantage of that. And a lot of the transactions that were put in play today at the lower prices won't actually get executed until Monday. Now, the price came up a bit in the mid 80s as the close. And come Monday, we'll have to see, because here in the U.S. market, the market opens before you can do your trades on the U.S. side for other international players. It'll probably come up several points, maybe $10, $15 is my guess in the overnight, late Sunday night U.S. into Monday morning. The people that got trades in when it goes to get executed are going to get it at higher numbers. It's still going to be a great deal, but it was really an institutional play by insiders to clear some positions to preserve life within those institutions. And at the end of the day, if the regulators do come in and do what they should do, somewhere out into the future, there should be criminal investigations for criminal collusion, a RICO conspiracy within what just happened because of a fraud in specifically the silver market, but gold is included in this. They didn't just do one, they did both to protect their private interests. And we'll see how that actually goes out. I don't expect justice there in 3 weeks or months or whatever. This is something that'll take a couple of years to start to roll through, but I believe that will come. It'll take several years to work through the details and get to that. It's just the way it is. Is silver still going higher? Absolutely. Is there pressure to keep the prices suppressed? Well, you did take a lot of the fervor out of the consumer market, scared the crap out of a lot of people, burned and hurt a lot of people, or at least they feel that way. If you bought silver anywhere in the last few weeks, you're fine. Take a deep breath. You probably couldn't have got in at those super low numbers, although it sounds like you should have been able to. It'll be the prices where they stabilize Monday and out through the beginning of the week. And then you'll see the pressure the march is on to run those prices higher as these positions are dissolved. And the pressure's on, it's going to bring more people in from the industrial side who want to get their silver while the getting's good. So anyway, just everybody take a deep breath. We're doing pretty good here. And, and I probably can lose my battery any moment here because we went a long time and I wasn't plugged in.
I appreciate it, brother. Yeah, go get yourself some grapes.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Juan, I don't even want to do this because I'm very bashful, but it is a Rumble rant and it's a question. I have to have you read it.
Yeah,
so I understand you. Oh, what a beautiful picture right there, dude. That is gorgeous. Yeah. OH58 Captain dropped another $10 Rumble rant. He says, Juan and Mike, I love you both for your great service to our country. Juan, please tell Mike how much he's truly made a difference in this fight. OH58 Captain. Hooah! So please, you can make that short. Your battery's dying.
Let me give you a hat tip. You will recall that I believe it was the first chapter in the Kid by the Side of the Road, my book, was literally taken from a interview you did with me, a presentation I did, and much of that is verbatim from that interview became the first chapter of my book, and so I have a lot of hosts that I do shows with, and I did then, and that's kind of a constantly morphing community. But I've always enjoyed. You've given me latitude to kind of do the longer conversation that maybe gets into some of the minutia that, you're a mature audience. Yeah, you're one of the most mature audiences that I have. Jen helped me out here. But, there's some audiences where I don't get the time. It's more rushed. We don't get to go all the different places. And usually, I think oftentimes we do like a weekend evening or something. And so it's more in that late night, maybe even an Art Bell type of a mode that I get to talk to people. The pressure's off a little bit. We're having more of just a pleasant conversation and kind of strategizing through what does this mean, that mean, the impact, effect, etc. And that's something that I've always enjoyed precisely with your audience. And so that is the hat tip to you. And there's just what I get to enjoy. If I just did like my own show or something, it wouldn't have the same texture that I get to have by doing stuff with different hosts. And each of them has kind of a different flavor to it. And you have a particular type of an audience that is literally as advanced or as Jen said, maybe even the most advanced as far as maybe a technical understanding of some of the things that are going on. And the crowd that you hang out with, some of the other folks that you do your shows with, huge hat tip. You have the details, the minutia that as an audience, you're able to work through things, weigh them out a little different. And then when I come into that audience, I don't need to go through the minutia as much as try to get maybe some understanding of the principles or the broad zone that we're in. And then the audience can take that and run, okay, well, here's how that applies here. Here's how that applies there. What's the mentality? What's the psyche of somebody like Trump or the people around him or the circumstance for certain industries or operations that are with us or opposing us at this moment? And then you make your decisions how you're going to personally operate in that environment. Are you investing in silver? Are you digging deeper with your shelter? Are you engaging to fight a spiritual fight or deciding to double down in your business and get ready for what Trump's doing within the economy and how it affects you or your community or your family? Things that Jen and I are doing right now. We've got, children that we hope to help get through some of this in other parts of the world. I've got a number of whistleblowers and people that have left certain agencies that are seeking assistance. We got people in instant physical peril right now that we're working through. I had a conversation with somebody, everybody in this audience would know precisely, a very detailed conversation just hours ago to figure out how we're going to get action to move somebody physically into a safe zone that is being hunted by multiple intelligence agencies right now. And so those are the kind of things that happen every day. If nothing else, if your audience kind of understands the broad zone, if it's prayer that you bring to this equation as being kind of a knowledgeable part of the audience, is that a minor thing or a major thing? I think it's major for many of the people that are saving America. It's because they're praying us through, and we won't even know the full extent of their part in this world. God himself preserves that to himself. We only will learn that on the other side. But it's critically important, and all of that plays a role.
I appreciate it, my man. I appreciate you, and I very much appreciate our talks over these last many years. And yeah, I believe that interview was the book was the first interview that we did there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
always have a great time with you. I know you got your beautiful bride is waiting. You guys are in Hawaii. You don't need to be talking to me, who's in 8-degree Rhode Island, for crying out loud. Just lived past a blizzard.